Hi, everyone. Beth here from Wonderful doing our second Just Got Back mini lunchtime Eastern Time webinar. Today, we have a very special guest. Sunni VonMutius is on the call as well. She is checking in from Florida right now, but she has this awesome road trip that she just did around the whole United States. And it was a 6-month-long road trip. Is that right, Sunni?
Yep.
That's so awesome. So I am currently in a hotel room in Connecticut, braving a nor'easter, and am so excited to hear about road tripping and getting out of the house and really seeing what the world has to offer. It's something that I've always wanted to do. And we're going to hear from Sunni all about the adventure that she's been on. So you are likely watching this on YouTube. If you're watching it live, on the right-hand corner of the screen, there's a little chat frame there, and you can use that to ask any questions. Please feel free throughout the conversation to throw your questions in there, and we'll ask them either during or at the end of our little webinar today. So go ahead and throw them in. And without further ado, I'll let you take it away, Sunni, and tell us all about this awesome trip that you've been on.
Okay. Right now, I'm in my parents' home. This is actually my childhood bedroom converted to my mom's office.
Oh
so my dad is here and he's hard of hearing. So if you hear somebody yelling in the background, it's just my dad. Don't freak out.
Real life over here.
Hashtag real life, you know. Have to but I put together, I wanted to tell you guys about how I planned it, because I'm sure you want to like see travel pictures and stuff. But if I were you, I'd be wondering like, how exactly did I pull off a 6-month road trip? So let's see if I can make the internet show you that.
Great.
Yay. All right. Ta-da.
Beautiful. That's great.
Not showing me yet. There we go. All right. So yeah, I went from June to November is when I was traveling. I spent 172 nights on the road. I slept in 34 different beds. I drove over 11,000 miles. I drove through 30 states. I spent 125 hours getting from one destination to another. That does not account for all of my exploring in between.
Wow.
And my budget actually spent $4,300, and I'm going to talk you through how that is possible at the end. So this is the car I was in. This is my baby. It is not the most practical car for a long road trip. It is a Volkswagen CC, which is their luxury model, which sounds very fancy, but in reality, it's not comfortable for long hauls. So I learned a lot, but it totally served me, and I have a lot of affection for it now. And this was my view. So I took Bob along, and he kept me company.
I love Bob.
And I got pictures of what I was seeing, honestly, mainly for my mom, because she really wanted to go and had to live vicariously through me. So these were the texts she got once a day, was, "Where is Bob?" And we just kind of made our way through.
It sounds like he should have had his own Instagram. At Where is Bob?
Well, and the elephant is Eloise. My mom actually, it's a long story I won't get into, but my mom managed to get me Eloise in the middle of my travels as a surprise. She's like an origami elephant that folds flat. And so I had to add her to the collection about midway through.
Oh my gosh.
And my friends knew about Bob. So they would sneak into my car and rearrange him into dance poses just to give me a laugh. So I have lots of pictures of Bob.
That's amazing.
Before I explain the road trip, because I want to make sure, like, I wouldn't recommend that anybody just dive into a 6-month road trip by yourself without having a decent like travel muscle built. So I spent 15 years in a corporate career as a consultant where I traveled 80% of the time and lived in different cities for 10 years. I spent several months a year backpacking through Europe by myself for over 10 years. I did a lot of travel by myself, road trips abroad in the US. So I have a strong muscle around this. These are all the places I've lived over the years. These are all the places I visited, most of it solo. So I guess I get frustrated when I see people like talk about something like anybody can do this. And it's like, yeah, anybody can, but it's important to, you know, I didn't just wake up one day having never gone on a trip by myself and say, I'm going to drive across the country. Like I had a lot of experience and like context that made it a realistic, safe goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. No, definitely. Especially when it's something like this. Sorry, Sunny.
Yeah.
Just, you know, that, you know, going out on your own, like driving, which is a hard thing to do so much of. I mean, yeah, it's good to have some experience behind you. Nice.
Well, and the way I save money is I barter for lodging. So in 2014, and I started my own business, and I built my business by being a nomad and networking as I travel. So then in 2016, I began bartering almost exclusively. So most of my income is in trade. I earn very little cash, and I started the Adventures of Sunny blog to share about it. And then it wasn't until 2017 that I was like, hey, I'm going to go on a road trip. But this is everything I own right here. This is my storage unit. Like I live a very minimalist lifestyle. So the idea of living out of a car for 6 months isn't a big leap for me. This is an office that I've been traveling with for 3 years now. So going from living out of a suitcase to living out of a car was an upgrade. I had so much extra space. It was bizarre. So awesome. There's a lot of like context that went into positioning me to be able to do this. So this was the tentative plan when I left my storage unit. So my storage unit's in Orlando, Florida. The dark red dots are where I have kind of like traveling families that I know I can stay with, and I could stay with for like 4 to 6 weeks. These are clients that I knew I was going to barter lodging. So I trade my services in exchange for being a temporary roommate for a minimum of 2 weeks. So I stayed in Philly for almost a month. I stayed in Chicago for almost 6 weeks. I stayed in Denver for over a month. And then what I did is I just figured out where are spots in between that I know people and plan to have those be pit stops. But I didn't really know I left it kind of up to the universe to figure out what was going to happen next. So it took a little bit of guns to like go off on this endless road trip and not really know where it was going to take me. But I'm glad I did. So the way I planned that is I started big and then narrowed it down. So this is the map I started with. I just added every place that I had a client, that I knew somebody. And this was the key. This is what really made me do this, is there's so many cities that I couldn't go to because they didn't have mass transportation or they weren't near a big airport because I flew everywhere. So I was like, I'm missing out on this huge part of the country just because it's not near a big city. So that's what I really focused on. Then I went Go Gadget social network. And I wasn't like, hey, I need to sleep in Pittsburgh. Who knows somebody in Pittsburgh that would be willing to let a crazy person sleep on their couch? So it's basically like couch surfing, but I used my own personal network. And I offered to barter services too. So a lot of times I was like, hey, I'll come and like cook for your family for the night if you let me sleep on your couch. And that worked out really well. And I made sure to do the math and know my limits. So for me, I have a bad back. I get bored easily. It's not realistic. So I had this spreadsheet because I'm a project manager. I do spreadsheets. So you'll see like from Orlando to Jacksonville is 2.5 hours. Sweet, I can do that. But like from East Meredith, which is upstate New York, to Pittsburgh was almost 7 hours. That was really pushing it for me. But I never drove more than 6 hours in a day in the end because I needed to make sure I took care of my body. The other thing you can learn from me, because I did not think this through, is consider the climate changes. So I had my car in Denver and yeah. So I flew home to handle some family stuff. So I flew back to and I got back to Denver and this had happened. And my car is based in Florida. I don't have an ice scraper. So I had to get creative. And
that's amazing.
It took me about 45 minutes because underneath that snow is actually a really thick layer of ice. So it took me about 45 minutes to use the car's heater and the CD case / ice scraper. And when I was done, I was like, did a little victory dance before I got in the car. And I realized there was a gentleman in the truck next to me watching this whole thing unfold with his video camera out. I was like, no! You couldn't offer to help?
Oh my gosh.
So I mentioned I've been living out of a suitcase for a while, and having a car was an upgrade. So when I pack to live out of my suitcase, I use these tank tops, and then there's my underoos. So this is what my suitcase looks like fully packed. And yes, I travel with a stuffed animal because I have a 5-year-old in my head. But then I was like, holy crap, I have a trunk I get to fill now. So this is what went in my trunk, this bottom picture here. And those are IKEA storage units. One of them was like super warm winter clothes. One of them was more like autumn clothes. And then there's just other, like I have a beach bag, and I have like a full-size shampoo, which was like a novel idea, but I had room for it. So why not? So I filled up my trunk. That I didn't even need all the room though. Like, look how much extra space there is. I was so impressed with myself.
Wow. You could have gone shopping. In addition, you know, every place you stop.
Well, I did. By the time I got back, it was a fairly full car because I bought souvenirs and stuff. But you see these plastic bins in the back corner here. Those were from IKEA as well. But like one of those is like my medicine cabinet, basically. And another one is a box that's like a spiritual workshop in a box. Another one is like a business workshop in a box, because I had extra space. And I, you know, part of how I afford to do this is I do business on the road, and I wanted to stay organized. I didn't want to be like the crazy bag lady going through my trunk in the middle. I keep it organized. The other thing I did is this suitcase here in the front is a carry-on suitcase for when I did need to fly. I was able to do that. But inside there is sheets, a towel hook, like anything I would need to be able to get to a place and settle in for a while and feel like it was home and I wasn't bothering people too much. I thought about car dwelling. My car is not made for it. I did get this fancy air mattress. So this is what it looks blown up inside on the left. And then on the right is it in my car. And it basically turns your back seat into a flat surface. It's not the most comfortable thing on the planet, but I did sleep on it for like 4 nights and it worked. It definitely worked, felt refreshed, and was able to drive the next day. The thing that stopped me from car dwelling is I didn't want to have to think about how to take care of my body. I was not that committed. I'm too old for that mentally. Like I was like, I'm not that adventurous. So I did not go that route.
That's interesting though. I always assumed that there were things like this available, but I've never even looked into it. So even just seeing what these mattresses look like and how they actually work is super
It's cool stuff, right?
Yeah, really cool stuff.
Yeah, I found a blog of a chick. She's pretty young, but she's amazing and she's super creative. And yeah, she got really like, she had like a bucket with kitty litter that was where the tire was, that was her bathroom. And I was like, that's so creative. And I'm not
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a lot.
Like save space and make it feasible to be a nomad, but also to be in my car is like, it looks like I'm a drug dealer here, but these are my vitamins on the left. I divvied them out for the full time I was going to be gone and put them in little Ziplocs. So I didn't have to travel with so many bottles and worry about ordering more and like refilling things. Like I just had everything I needed. And then on the right here, that's like my little supplies to do a workshop on the go. And I just kind of got everything I would need together and I put it in a bin and I stuck it in my trunk.
Was there anything that you like when you thinking about? Oh, sorry, Sunny. I think I'm on a delay. One of the things I was just thinking about was, first off, this is amazingly organized. Like I love how you've put things into little individual containers and you've really been thoughtful ahead of time about what you've needed. Did you also think in terms of how you packed your car? Like, okay, I'm going to put things on the top because I'm going to need those things first. And, things I will need less of, I'm going to put on the bottom. Or did you find that it was not really possible to pack in that way?
I did. So like back to this picture of the trunk, like the suitcase on the right is sheets and towels and things I would need to settle in. The bag on top is the East Coast, and I was spending a lot of time in warm climates. And the black bag under the beach bag is like layerable clothes, like flannel shirts and light jackets. But in the very back of the trunk is another storage container with like heavy duty coats. Cause I knew by the time I got to like Denver and the Grand Canyon, it was going to be getting cold because it was October, November timeframe. What happened by the end of my trip is that it would be hot during the day and cold at night in the desert. And I needed all these different layers. And I kind of gave up on staying as organized and just made sure I knew where stuff was, because it was getting to be too much trouble. But it worked out for the first half of the trip for sure.
I feel like if it were me, by at least, I don't know, probably by the first week, I would have everything organized, but then it would just be all over the place. Like, it must take so much just self-control even to not only think so far ahead of time and to plan out how you're going to use things, but then also to kind of keep yourself organized throughout the trip in order to make it easier for yourself as you go.
Yeah, but living as a nomad for almost 3 years now, I'm so used to that. Like,
true.
To have that lifestyle and live completely out of a suitcase. I have no apartment. I have no home base. I have a storage unit that's basically a big closet. So
yeah,
I literally have been living out of like a 4x2 suitcase long, that this was just basically like, let's do it on a slightly bigger scale. But that's what I meant at the beginning when I was like, I had a specific muscle that I'd already built that is kind of realistic for my brain to wrap itself around.
So you're already thinking in that way when you're planning something like this. It's not so far out of the realm of possibility. That's really cool. Really neat. Yeah.
So like the idea of doing my medicine this way, my vitamins, I've been doing that for almost 3 years, because as a nomad in a suitcase, I don't have room for 10 bottles of vitamins to keep my body healthy. I need to keep it flat and thinking ahead and thinking about what do I really need, what's superfluous. And I'm sure like all of the ladies here who travel a lot, you're kind of used to thinking about it for like a 2-week time frame. It's a big game changer when you're thinking about it for months or even a year at a time. Yeah. But once you've done it for a little while, it becomes secondhand.
That's neat.
Yeah. So organization, I love food and I snack a lot. Like, I'm a snacker. I don't tend to like sit down and eat a big meal. I tend to like I go to a restaurant, I'm like, who wants to split appetizers? Because I want to try everything. So this was my kitchen on the left. This is the floor. I know it's hard to tell because of the angle. It's actually a screenshot from a Facebook Live. If you go to my Facebook page and go to the videos, I did Facebook Lives a lot. And one of them is a tour of my car. So if you're curious, you can see that. But this is a screenshot. So on the left side of that left picture is my pantry. Things like chips and nuts and cereal. And there's bread for sandwiches and some candy. And then on the right of that left picture is my gray cooler with tomatoes and carrots and hummus out because I was about to eat lunch. But that cooler was big enough to hold like a bag of salad, leftover Chipotle. I traveled with like little Ziploc Tupperware containers. So like I lived off of Chipotle because I could make 3 meals out of it. And I would put what was left in a Tupperware container and I would put it in the cooler. And then when I got to whoever was hosting me that night, I would be like, don't worry about feeding me. I'll feed myself. And I'd walk in with my leftovers and use their microwave. And I basically had a kitchen in my car and fed myself, which saved me so much money on food.
Yeah.
And then on the right, that's my work bag, but it was on the passenger side. You'd think I'd want to get out of the car. And I did. I had to get out and walk. But when it came to working, it got to the point where instead of going into a coffee shop and dealing with the background noise, I would just pull up outside, like go through the drive-through and then sit outside and use the Wi-Fi versus going inside. I mean, I purchased something because I didn't want to be a schmuck, but I didn't necessarily sit inside. My car was my home. I was like in my pajamas with slippers on. I'm like, I don't want to be around people. So I would sit in my car and work, and I had my whole office on my passenger seat, and it worked out really well. I just had to manage like getting out and moving my body. That was a big thing I had to manage.
I was just going to ask, did you ever feel super confined spending so much time in your car? Did you feel like you just needed to stretch out, during the day, or did it not bother you? Okay.
Absolutely. But I did a lot. That's what side trips, perfect segue, Beth. That was what side trips were for. So because I'm an entrepreneur, I would have in my head, like, okay, I've got 3.5 hours of driving on Monday. And I also have 5 client calls, which means I need to find a city halfway between that's going to have Wi-Fi. Like, I needed to plan out where I was going to be near Wi-Fi and near internet to be able to do my calls, or I was going to at least have good signal. I did a lot of calls. I was driving. All of my clients knew what I was up to. But I also had to plan out, like, how am I going to get stimulated? How am I going to move my body? How am I not going to screw up my back? So side trips were like my bread and butter. Social media and be like, hey, I'm driving through this part of the country. What shouldn't I miss? I also followed my own passions. Like, I'm a huge nature, like, I'm not a camper, but I love to be outside. There are certain types of history that I'm really into. I love, like, since I was a little girl, obsessed with Frank Lloyd Wright architecture. And I like good food, and I'm a vegetarian. So I used those niche things that were pretty specific to search and see, like, what's in that part of the country. And then ask locals. My favorite question to ask when I'm on the road is, what's the coolest non-touristy thing I can do around here? And I found really, I'm going to show you pictures. I found really, really cool stuff just by asking that question. Like, I'd go into, like, maybe a farmer's market or even a gas station, and I would just start talking to the person behind the counter. And if they were interested and friendly, I would start asking questions and get really cool ideas.
That's really smart.
And then underutilized resource, I think, for travelers, if you're looking for a more local experience. So this is Roadside America, in case you weren't sure it really existed. It does.
Gosh.
The stuff on the left is obviously, like, this is actually Route 66. So the original road. This park on the right, I found on Roadside America, but it's like, it was a place where, like, a village in the 1920s burnt down and turned to ash, and the city was sick of looking at it. So they built this beautiful tiered park, and it's not that big. I probably spent 2 hours just kind of wandering and, like, stretching my legs and stuff. So,
wow.
But it was random. And here's the thing, like, it just happened to be in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I needed a break. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have even stopped, but I knew I was going to need a physical break by then. And why not stop at something cool, right?
That's awesome.
This is the Frank. I could talk a long time about Frank Lloyd Wright. If anybody who's watching this wants to geek out with me, please PM me and I will. But just for those of you who don't care, I won't go too deep. This is Frank Lloyd Wright's personal home in Wisconsin, which is really far off the beaten path and hard to get a reservation for. But happened. They don't have a lot of people want to go solo. So there happened to be a tour that was full, but they had a single spot. And since I was a solo traveler, cha-ching.
That's awesome.
This is Falling Water, which is one of Frank Lloyd Wright's most popular designs. It was made for the Macy family back in the 20s. And it's really far off the beaten path. It's hard to get to. I was probably the youngest person there by 50 years, but I cried when I got on property. I was that excited to be there. So cool little, side trips.
That's awesome.
This is a band. Nanko is a band that I've been obsessed with for a while. I got to go see them live. I kind of it was awesome. I stumbled upon a volleyball tournament. This was in a random park. It was on Roadside America. It's a massive slide, and the kids all had plastic bags to make their butts not stick. So you went really fast. So, yeah. It was awesome. A little kid was like, I went to go down it in my shorts, and a little girl came up to me. She's like, "You're going to want this." I was like, "Oh, thanks."
Smart.
When I was in Chicago, it happened to be Fringe Festival, which is a theater festival that I am involved in my hometown. So I got involved there and went to lots of shows and supported local artists in theater. I went to the largest Renaissance festival in the country and the longest running. Happened to be north of Chicago, and it happened to be running while I was there. And I'd asked that question, what's the coolest non-touristy thing to do? And they were like, you have to go to all of the things. Like, there's no electricity. Everything's like run old school. And there was an actual joust. And I wanted to show you guys a video, but I wasn't sure how to make it work through this technology. But there are videos in my Facebook feed, if you're curious, of an actual joust.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was cool. I felt like it's so not historically correct, but I felt like I was in that movie with Heath Ledger, the
Yes, A Knight's Tale. You're of a certain generation when that's the reference that you come up with. Yeah.
Well, first it was Princess Bride. I'm a roller coaster junkie, and my baby sister lives in Ohio, and I remembered that the roller coaster capital of the world was near there, and she hadn't gone and probably wouldn't have without somebody to go with her. So I took her, and we went and rode 17 roller coasters in a day, and it was awesome. Philly, I kept asking, what can I do that's not touristy? And I got invited to a legit, like, old school, like, it's a block party, but it's in one of those neighborhoods that's like still gritty and like lots of like people that have lived there for generations. This is a pool made out of street barriers.
Oh my goodness, with like a tarp over it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That is so cool.
You can still stay there. Awesome. Also outside of Philly, I found the grounds for sculpture, which is kind of near Trenton, New Jersey, about 45 minutes outside of Philly. Again, there's a video, there's in my YouTube channel, there's a 3-minute video, and then there's a 30-minute video that I made for my mom that's just me holding a camera and walking through the park. It's like 45 acres of art sculptures. Every single corner you turn around, there's art hidden. It is, if you like art and kind of weird stuff, I spent probably 7 hours there. It was amazing.
Wow. That's so cool.
This is Meow Wolf in Santa Fe. I can't, one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. That is me climbing into a washing machine to go into the world of the washer. It's bizarre. I can't really explain it, but if you're ever in Santa Fe, do Meow Wolf, pay for the glasses, and go through the fridge. That's what everybody says, and they were spot on. So I will pass that tip along.
What?
The other thing I did is I just went into random like salvage yards and thrift stores, and you find the craziest stuff, and you meet cool people. I mean, I talked to the owner for a long time, and he was really cool. And but I mean, like, what is that? I don't even. Who makes? I had no words. I was so excited to see this. Yeah. I had no words.
That's awesome.
I also love going into old bookstores. The people who run bookstores tend to be agency, and they usually don't get a lot of people talking to them from like a genuine interest perspective. So they're usually pretty chatty. So those are, like, for me, it turned out to be a great resource to find cool stuff to do. And of course, I always look for the travel section to see what's going on, and travel, 20, 50 years ago, I find fascinating. And then I mentioned food. And I'm vegetarian, so this is the best vegan cheesesteak in Philly. I tried 4 different places. I agree, this was the best. Blackbird Cafe, if you're curious. Cheese Curds in Wisconsin. And I had to have Chicago Diner, which is a vegan cafe in Chicago. Cinnamon Toast Crunch Milkshake in Des Moines, Iowa. Apparently this is where everybody goes. It was weird, but it was really good. So this is the trip I ended up making. Remember, I showed you the tentative one. This is like the map when I was all done. So the dark green dots are the places that I went and stayed for a while. They're places I lived for weeks at a time. All of the light green dots are places that I made new friends, met up with old friends, clients, friends of friends, couch surfed. I paid for an Airbnb a couple of times just because I needed to like have some space to myself. So rural, there was nothing. There's no couch surfers. I knew no one. I didn't feel safe camping because of the political climate. And so I got a cheap hotel, but that only happened, I think I paid to sleep someplace 6 nights out of the 172. So not many.
Wow.
I went through the Grand Canyon and Bryce and Zion, and I went to lots and lots of parks. The orange dots are kind of like a vacation I took, where I was like, I'm just going to do whatever I want to experience nature on my own. And then I did fly to California and then did a little mini road trip there to see a bunch of friends and stuff. But you'll notice the dots are pretty close together because I knew it wasn't safe for me to drive too far. So like the longest haul I did in the end was from Omaha, Nebraska to Denver, Colorado. And everybody was worried because they're like, it's going to be a boring drive. Dude, I had like a standoff with a tumbleweed. I had a coyote like hanging out in the road. I stopped to relieve myself, and there was a herd of deer that decided to walk up on my car when I was like standing outside of it. So that got interesting. I had a tornado go across the road in front of me, and a semi truck stopped to like make sure I was okay because I saw my Florida tags. Like it was the most event. So back to things to think about. Safety is huge. This is one of those cases, I don't know about you guys, but my dad was always like, don't let your gas get below a half tank. And, you know, he wanted to teach me how to check my tire pressure. And I was like, come on, Dad, like, do I really need to know this? You do. If you're going to be in your car and drive thousands of miles, you do. So I got a really nice, like a gift was a AAA membership. I made sure I had a first aid kit and it was like actually my car. That wasn't smart. So I moved it. Accessories can be really helpful. So like, it's hard to see in this picture, but there's a mount in my CD player that would hold my phone. So it would be my GPS. It also let me safely like navigate to different music, navigate to songs, answer the phone to talk to a client without it being like dangerous. So it was like 20 bucks on Amazon and it was so worth it. It also positioned my phone in a perfect position to be able to do selfie videos while driving and look at the road, but you guys could see me, if that makes sense. So servicing your vehicle. So I was in a different mind frame, and I didn't have like the normal reminders. And I was like, wait, I just got an oil change. Why do I need another one? Well, because you've driven halfway across the country, silly. So, and I encountered a lot of mechanical issues with my car. They were all about luxury items. Like they weren't anything that affected the mechanics of the car or the safety of the car, but like features wouldn't work. Like the windows didn't want to go down properly. I had to keep the light, you know, stupid stuff. But I ended up having to find mechanics in several different cities. And if you're not comfortable with that conversation, I would practice before you go on a long road trip because I had to negotiate and you know, all of the typical conversations of a woman walking into a mechanic shop, the stuff that happened, all of those. This is a guy named Rocky in Philly, and he looked and sounded like Rocky. We became friends. He wouldn't try the work he did.
That's awesome.
He did it for, yeah.
On that note, actually talking about, you just touched on one of the questions I was going to ask you, and that's being a woman and traveling in this way. I know that you're, you know, an experienced traveler, that you've lived nomadically before. I'm curious if you felt any differences or things that you've had to think about being a woman, or even just traveling as a woman in the US when maybe you typically travel more internationally. I'm curious if you found any differences or things to think about.
I think it's really important whenever you travel, especially as a woman, to just be really present and to follow your gut. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, I had a bar that I've had for a really long time. And it just so happens to be a twist on our current president's campaign slogan. That's not why I bought it. I've had it since before then. But in certain parts of our country, people took offense to it. And so I had to be present and aware that that was a possibility and be prepared to have the conversation, which happened 3 times. 3 times when I was in the United States, I got approached and harassed about my bumper sticker. And at one point I was threatened and I had to have a really quick gut decision of like, do I call 911? Do I hop in my car and flee? Do I stand up to him? What do I do? And somebody in my environment stood up for me and chased him off. He was coming toward me before he got into my space because I was super present. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Be on alert. And the other thing that I've learned how to do as a nomad is I know how to turn my energy on and off. So what I mean by that is like, there are times when I'm on and I'm like, who wants to be my friend? And I'm like super bubbly and friendly. But when I start to sense that I might not be in the safest environment, I turn that off and I like turn into like resting bitch face. You know what I mean? Like, don't mess with me. Yeah. Because it's a safe, you know, so,
yeah.
But I never feel safe in, but I kind of put myself there knowingly. There was never a time where I was just kind of like a typical woman road tripping that I felt like I wasn't safe. In fact, there was a lot of times where people took care of me. Semi trucks took care of me many times. I would go into the Love's truck stops often to like stretch my legs and walk around and know that it was kind of like a busy, safe environment for me to just kind of walk the parking lot. And truck drivers, or I would talk to them and then I'd see them 2 stops later and they would like, if you're paying attention. So, but yeah, I was never a serious concern for me. I had a guy pay for my gas at a Love's because of this bumper sticker.
Oh my gosh. I love that.
It can go both ways.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to mention that saved my butt a couple of times is I always took screenshots of the directions so that if I lost cell service or my phone, you know, randomly didn't want to connect or whatever, that I would have that. And sometimes if I was concerned about like losing battery on my phone, if I was out on a hike or something, I would take a picture of the map or like actually handwrite old school, write the directions to make sure that I never got completely lost. Because some of the parts I was driving, I was in the middle of nowhere. There was no one to ask. So don't depend on technology when you're in an area that's. All right, budgeting. So think about what type of experience you want, because if you're going to drive across the country and camp along the way, that's a very different experience than if you're going to live in your car or couch surf or look for Airbnbs or if you want to stay in hotels. Like those are all really different trips to plan. And they all require a very different budget. So in my case, I stayed with people that I like were friends of friends or people I'd been introduced to or couch surfed. 91% of the time, I did the math, 91% of the time I stayed with somebody. And that saved me about $4,000. I assumed $25 a day for food because I did a Google search and the average cost in the most expensive city was about $25 a day for people who are buying groceries. So I always a lot and lived out of that fridge in the cooler in the kitchen in my car. I tracked the distance I was going to travel and I used a formula to predict gas expense per person. So I figured I would share that with you because I was kind of proud of figuring it out. So if your car mine averages 32 miles a gallon. And the average cost of a gallon of gas for what my car needs premium. Remember I said it wasn't the best car to do a trip in. In the country, the average is $3.50. So the math is it costs my car 9 cents a gallon to go. And then I can look and say, okay, based on where I'm going, how many, and then that tells me how much I can expect to spend. So I knew in advance how much to budget for gas based on using the national average and then tracking my distance. And then, like I said, I over budget for everything. So I used 15 cents a mile in my math because I wanted to account for car maintenance, oil changes, you know, any other things that might come up, car washes. So I over budgeted for everything. So I didn't have to stress. This is the spreadsheet I used. Like I said, I'm a project manager. I'm very spreadsheet heavy. So I tracked like how long is it going to take to make sure I wasn't signing up for more than I wanted. So I had my Google map and I would transfer. You can actually do an export from Google Maps too. But I transferred the dates over. So like how long is it going to take? What's the distance? How much? And had a budget in advance knowing what to expect to make sure that I didn't get myself to Denver and be like, I can't afford to get home. So overall, my budget for the trip was $7,000. This is what I actually spent. I won't go through it all, but for you number junkies, you can see it laid out. So I actually spent $4,300 in cash. But then if I use the local average on cost for food and like an Airbnb equivalent to where I stayed with friends and clients and stuff, that theoretical like energetic barter value was $900 in food, $3,800 in lodging. So my total cost, including bartering for the trip, was $9,000. But I didn't have to spend all of that, if that all makes sense.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Book videos and all that fun stuff. If you want like more, I mean, I took tons and tons of pictures of the national parks and stuff, but I was telling Beth before we started that a lot of my travel pictures from the road trip are of people. Because at this point I've traveled so much that I was like, yeah, another museum. Yeah. Like I wanted to meet people. So I have lots and lots of pictures with people. But on my website, there's a link to my Flickr account. I have like 10,000 travel pictures and there's a whole album just for the road trip. There's also a link to my YouTube channel where I have lots of videos of me going through like some of those side trips I took and that kind of fun stuff. So if you want more that stuff, I am a huge proponent of empowering women to travel, especially solo. I think there's something really empowering about it. So if I can help, by all means, let me know.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Sunny. Thank you, Sunny. This has been a great experience. Just, I feel like I just went on my own road trip, which is so much fun. I'm like already thinking about where I want to go. Tell me, I have a million questions, but I'm going to start really basic for you. Tell me where the idea came from. Is this something that you've always wanted to do? Was it kind of an on a whim decision, as much as you can do while planning that? Or where did you say, okay, I'm going to go and hit the road for 6 months?
It really came from having clients that wanted to barter for lodging, but they lived in cities that weren't near a major airport, or like I can't barter for lodging if I don't have transportation, right? So like if I show up in New York and I'm bartering for lodging, I can use the subway to get around. I can go to networking events. It's totally copacetic. Like I had a client that wanted to barter for lodging in Denver, and you need a car.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I have a car. I don't use it very often. So that was really what the impetus was. And then then I started to get excited because I was like, oh, all this Frank Lloyd Wright stuff. Oh my gosh, I've never been to the Grand Canyon. How was I've never been? I should go to the Grand Canyon, right? So then yeah.
Well, and being an American too, I feel like every time I travel outside of the country, I'll talk to somebody who will be like, oh, where have you been in the States? I've been to, ballooning in New Mexico and Las Vegas and Seattle. And I'm like, I've never been to any of those things. Like I really have not seen a lot of my own country. And so it's kind of neat that you're able to just do it, like the big stuff and the little stuff.
Another actually factor for me too is I had a bucket list from when I was 11, and the first thing I put on there was have a meaningful experience in all 50 states before I'm 35.
Oh, how cool is that?
And when I left on the road trip, I was at 48 states, and the only 2 left were Hawaii and New Mexico. So when I started planning the road trip, I was like, I am going to New Mexico, getting it done. So I missed my goal. I didn't meet the full, I'm older than that, but I got really close. So I only have 1 state left thanks to the road trip. So yeah.
Nice. What state?
Hawaii.
Oh, Hawaii. Oh, that's a good one. That'll be fun when you actually do visit.
This year before my birthday, and I'm looking for places to stay. So if anybody has a hookup, let me know. But I think it's going to happen before this birthday. That is the goal, before July. That is the goal, is to get to Hawaii, and I'll have all 50 states. But it's the same thing. Like people are like, oh my gosh, I've done all these things in your country. And I'm like, oh. So I wanted to be able to like share in that, and be able to like have pride in my own country. I don't want to get into politics, but I feel like that's something that we sometimes step over as Americans, especially lately. I wanted to reconnect to that.
Yeah.
Another thing that that motivated it was, I felt like there was just a lot of they, them happening in social media. And a lot of my world is on social media because I'm a nomad, right? I connect to people virtually, and everybody was like, they think this and they think that. And I was like, I'm really sick of that. On this road trip, I sought out people who had different opinions. So I purposely stayed with a family that was white supremacists because I wanted to understand who they were. So that was another thing for me, is I wanted to connect to people on a human level.
You're like that show with W. Kamau Bell. Oh my gosh, The United Shades of America. Have you seen this show?
No.
And I think you'll love it, because he basically every episode goes and digs deep into, a section of society that is not either well represented or not known about so well. So one episode he goes to a white supremacist community, and he's a Black man, so he's kind of like trying to understand them. And another time he goes to a prison and is like learning about the prison experience. But it's really interesting because he has these really deep conversations with people and is really trying to understand where they come from. Cool. We have a question in from another Beth also, and she wanted to know, if you did this again, is there anything that you would do differently?
I don't think so. I didn't mention, but my partner travels a lot as well. And typically in my nomading, I will connect with them. And with me road tripping, they committed to connecting with me once a month. And that was a huge grounding point, you know, having cuddles and having like, you don't get touched a lot when you travel a lot. You get handshakes, but you don't get like loving touch. And that's a big thing for me, I think, for a lot of women. So being able to have that once a month was really important. But adding that in, that, you know, I did that, like, no, yeah, I mean, I loved it. It was great. There's a lot of time alone, which was nurturing for me.
What was the biggest surprise for you, whether a place that you went to that really surprised you or an experience that you weren't expecting?
I didn't expect to have as much fun as I did when I was in the national parks in Utah and Arizona, because I'm not a camping girl. Like, I'm not the outdoorsy girl. I like nature, but I'm like, I want to go for a walk in a city park or go to the beach. Like, so going to those national parks by myself with like zero background in that world and being able to like read the map, all of that was very empowering. And doing it alone was a really big deal for me. So it was kind of a big breakthrough for me in my relationship to what I'm capable of as a traveler. I was always like, oh, I don't do like nature travel. But now I'm like, oh, I went and hiked the Grand Canyon all by myself for a day. I ran into an elk and it was no big thing.
And it makes you learn about yourself too, doing things that you maybe typically wouldn't do. Like, I think one of the things I love about travel is I get to experiment with being like a different person, you know, where maybe when I'm at home, I really like, you know, going to museums and I don't really like going out at night. But then when I travel, I sort of want to experience a little bit of everything. And so I will open myself in a way, just subconsciously, in a way that I don't at home, because I'm like, oh, this is new and different. I should try this. And so I think it's nice. You find, you may realize that you do like something you didn't think you liked, or you appreciated something about it that maybe you didn't know about.
It did take a lot of energy. I mean that like physical energy, but also like more like the spiritual, energetic energy. Like, it takes a lot of emotional bandwidth to be, it's one thing to be a nomad, but it's even more to like be in the car and be in control of your own transportation and have to always think about like, how am I going to get there? You know, what route am I going to take? Where's the next gas station? Where am I going to find a bathroom? Like, that becomes a big thing, you know? So it takes a lot of energy. I slept a lot. I slept in straight up. I'm going to sleep in till I wake up tomorrow. I might be 2 o'clock. And knowing that, like, honoring that is really important.
Is there anything that you planned for or packed that you didn't end up needing at all, or didn't use like you thought you would?
I didn't use the beach gear as much as I thought I would. I'm from Florida, so I take a swimsuit everywhere, but you know, that's not a thing everywhere else. I had what I thought were hiking boots, but apparently they were more like 90s style combat boots. And I wish that I'd had a good pair of true hiking boots for all the different things I did in nature. But no, I used every single thing that I packed. There was nothing that I was like,
what did you pack clothing wise?
I packed what I normally would pack for the weather in the southern states. You know, the same thing I'm sure we all pack: tank tops, layerable things, t-shirts, shorts. As an entrepreneur, I always pack a couple of outfits that are a little bit more polished. I always have an outfit to do speaking because I teach workshops and stuff. But then I also packed like thin layers for autumn. And then I had like a good solid fleece. I had a lot of scarves, but like the kind that can be like stylish or warm. I ended up buying, I'm not a fan of Walmart. I just don't like the experience. Just entire towns in some places, right? I bought a pair of sweatpants at Walmart for $9.99 that I ended up wearing like every day for 3 weeks. They were so comfortable. So one thing I didn't think to pack for was comfortable driving clothes. When you're sitting, you don't want jeans because it digs in, you know, like, and there's a thing apparently amongst the wives of truck drivers called car shoes. It's like house shoes. They wear slippers in the car.
Funny.
So I was advised to get me some car shoes, and I was glad I did because it kept my feet warm without having to wear shoes. So like little learned about.
That's cool. Now, I think it's always interesting to think about how to put that ensemble together, especially because you were going to all of these really different places and through the better part of a year, 6 months and 3 seasons, I suppose, almost. So yeah, kind of thinking ahead about how to do that and what to wear. But I'm assuming you did a lot of laundry at the places you stayed at. Is that how you got around?
I had laundry. Yeah. I mean, and I'm used to that from being nomadic, right? I mean, I can only fit maybe 5 or 6 days worth of clothes in a carry-on suitcase. So I have to get comfortable doing laundry and laundromat.
Yeah.
And you'll see if you go stalk me and look at my pictures, I only have like 8 shirts. I'm wearing the same thing.
Yeah.
But when you choose to live a minimalist or a nomadic life, that's part of your mentality. It's like I'm prioritizing a travel-based lifestyle more than I am my fashion sense.
Yeah.
And it's not a judgment on people who prioritize fashion. It's just, you can't have everything and that something has to give, right? So, yeah.
Favorite gadgets that you brought? Did you hear me or did you miss
the important part of your question?
Oh, I said, no worries. I said favorite gadgets that you brought with you.
So the thing that held my phone in the car was priceless. Such a good investment for $20. I was gifted, so I had a birthday in the middle of my road trip, and my partner gifted me a car oil infuser that was also a humidifier. It fit into my cup holder.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was, so I have like sinus stuff, and allergies. And so being able to hike in the really dry air, I would get like bloody noses and stuff. But by the time I got to my car and turned on the humidifier, my car became like this little humid haven of like Florida-like weather for me. So it was great. It was really good. I put like packing tape and masking tape and scissors and stamps and like things that I would have in a junk drawer into my glove box. And I went into my glove box probably once a week for something. Like I'd be staying with somebody and I couldn't find scissors in their home and I'd be like, screw it, I'd go out to my car. So
nice.
That was really helpful. I had like a screwdriver, just like weird random stuff that
Yeah, but you never know when you need it.
Yeah. My car was my home, literally. I mean, yeah, it was great. But yeah, that thing, the mount, I can find a link for it on Amazon, but that mount ended up being really awesome. Because, our phones are such a lifeline.
Yeah.
Like having that lifeline,
now. Right.
When I did need to interact with it, and safe from cops. Another fun fact, I got pulled over 3 times. All of them were for not having a license plate on the front of my car, because in Florida we don't have those.
Oh,
and like I got no ticket. Every single one was in a small town. They saw me coming and they pulled me over for not having a license plate.
Huh. That's real. And did you just say,
other
well,
than that,
not from here? Yeah.
Yeah. Once they saw the tag, they would walk up and do the check or whatever. And we pulled you over for this, but we know that I never sped. In my hometown, I'm a lead foot, but when I was on the road trip, I always stuck to the flow of traffic or the speed limit. Yeah, because I didn't want to risk a ticket in a foreign city that I had to worry about dealing with. Totally.
If there's somebody who wants to do a road trip like this, and this is my last question for you today, as you mentioned in the beginning and taking this full circle, that is a serious road trip, like going out for 6 months and all the budgeting and all the packing. And if you don't have experience being a nomad, it will be really hard to do something like this. What if there's somebody who wants to do something like this for the first time and, drawing from your experiences living nomadically as well, what's the best way for them to get started, or what's maybe a smaller version of a trip that you would recommend somebody take to get their feet wet?
I would say start with something smaller. A lot of my earlier road trips, I would fly in to like Hartford, Connecticut, for instance, and I would rent a car, and then I would spend the week hitting all of the states and the sites kind of around Hartford and make a big circle, and then I'd return to Hartford and fly home. I also flew into I think Kansas City and then drove down the Mississippi and then flew home from Memphis or whatever. So that's maybe like, because if you fly somewhere, you're packing in a way that you're comfortable, right? Because it's not your car. So maybe kind of baby step into it that way. Another thing I would say is if it appeals to you and you're thinking that you want to have more of kind of a nomadic lifestyle, start by trimming down your life. You don't have to get rid of everything and live out of a storage unit, but you could potentially start putting things in the garage that you don't use often and see if you can live without them. You know, start kind of trimming down your life and seeing what you can get used to living with. And pay attention to how often you touch things. You know, if you use something all the time, then when you start packing for your road trip, you need to think about how to take it with you. So when you start to pack for something like this, it can be really easy to like think you need to take everything with you. But if you start by paying attention, what am I doing? Because every morning I make myself a healthy smoothie, and I didn't want to count on people having a blender. So I used room in my car for that. But I didn't need to take like a food processor and my favorite crock, you know. So pay attention to what you use regularly to think about what you need to pack.
Right.
And make sure you have a safety buddy. So like mine was my partner, but they knew where I was supposed to be every single night. There were times where I stayed with a friend of a friend that we didn't know. He knew the address I was going to be at and pre-Googled the local police station. So if I didn't check in, the police were going to open the door. And I warned them of that too. Like I let them know like, hey, my partner's super protective. Just, you know, be safe. Think ahead and be safe and make sure somebody knows where you're going to be so that if you do, God forbid, disappear, people know where to start looking for you. Because it could just be as simple as you ran out of gas and they need to send, you know, the local police down that street to look for you.
Right. Right. Exactly. Great. Well, all really good pieces of advice. Sunni, it's been so much fun talking through this with you and getting all of your ideas. You are not just somebody who's been on a road trip, but a real nomadic travel expert. And so I appreciate you taking the time to really go through this with us and giving us all of your thoughts and experiences. And I know you shared the slide, but remind everybody out loud how they can find you again on social media.
Yeah, you can follow me on Facebook. My tag is Wild Sunni, or you can go to adventuresofsunni.com is my website where I have all my blogs and the videos and the pictures and all of that stuff. And you can spell it. You don't have to.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. It's been a real honor to have you. Thank you, everyone who's watching live as well as watching the recording. We are planning more of these soon and we'll get them on the schedule. And in the meantime, have a great rest of your day and enjoy, hopefully not too much of a snowstorm or whatever seasonal weather you're having in whatever hemisphere you live in. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Sunni.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Bye.